Okay, so today I have Sarah Keller with us, who's a canine fitness professional and someone I really like referring clients to if I'm struggling with training. A lot of times when I start hitting a snag with training, I have a feeling that it's something to do with posture or pain. And so I really like getting a second opinion on that since it's not my specialty. And since without that, a lot of times I'm not able to progress with training. And so, Sarah, can you tell us a bit about yourself and what services you offer and how you got into canine fitness?
Yeah, so thank you for having me on. My name is Sarah Keller. I am a board certified canine massage therapist and a multi-certified canine fitness trainer. I also have other certifications in pain science and cats as well. So, yeah, I was a human athlete for most of my life. My business originally started as just the idea of working out with your dog. But as I learned more about canine fitness, that gradually became my primary focus. And I'm now incredibly passionate about learning as much as I can about canine biomechanics and identifying signs of pain in dogs. I now offer canine musculoskeletal pain risk assessments, canine gait analysis, therapeutic exercise programs to help improve posture and movement, canine massage, and even feline services.
That is amazing and a really long list of certifications. I really, really value your expertise.
Thank you.
Yeah, so what does posture mean exactly in dogs and why is that important?
So, posture refers to the position in which an individual holds their body, including the alignment of the joint segments and the spine. So, correct posture is defined as a position in which minimum stress is placed on each joint. So, the benefits of having good posture includes it creates a solid foundation with good alignment. It helps to align the body's center of gravity, improving balance and coordination. It allows for the most energy efficient movement, and it can help to prevent the development of musculoskeletal and joint issues. So, incorrect posture then is defined as a position that increases stress on the joints. So, it's going to increase unnecessary stress throughout the entire body. It's going to increase the risk of developing joint related issues, and it can cause muscular imbalances due to changes in the joint segments' position to one another. So, it's going to cause, if the joint is pulling one way, it's going to cause that muscle to be tighter, whereas the muscle on the opposite end is going to be weaker. And so, yeah, incorrect posture is just going to increase the overall likelihood of a dog or human experiencing strains, sprains, and overuse injuries. So it seems very niche, but good posture and encouraging good posture in our dogs is really beneficial for their overall health and well-being.
That is so interesting, and it really is identical to humans, except it's something I didn't hear about until the last year or so. And I definitely think it does sound niche or like an extra part of dog care, like an optional one. But with the way you're describing it, it really sounds like necessary for physical health.
Yeah, I think it's a really, joint comfort is so important for overall quality of life. I think that we see a lot more postural inefficiencies in dogs compared to humans because dogs have greater structural differences as a species than any other species that there is. They've just been bred to have different structure. A lot of dogs have different roles or jobs that they play and just very different lifestyles. So, it seems to be much more glaring to me now that I've developed the eye when a dog has poor posture, and it just really contributes to their overall discomfort.
That totally makes sense. And I definitely do see a lot of breeds that seem like they've got structural issues from the get-go, like say dachshunds who are really prone to intervertebral disc disease or Frenchies, other long back dogs, a lot of small dogs who have luxating patellas from the get-go. For dogs who are structurally maybe not built as well from the beginning, are there still things that you can do to make them more comfortable?
Definitely. So, yeah, some dogs, we've kind of bred them in a way so their structure looks really cute for the breed, but it might not be functional for the dog. So, depending on what it is, just for example, bringing up the short-legged dogs like the dachshunds, what we call long-back dogs, but it's not that their backs are longer, just that their limbs are shorter. Just being able to really work on that spinal stability is going to be really beneficial for them. Dogs, some breeds have been bred to have really straight angulation. So the angles that are made at the joints are really straight, which can increase the likelihood of injury as well. So just being able to then support those joints, typically with stability exercises, joint stability, can really help to reduce the risk of it becoming an orthopedic concern that could potentially require surgery.
That totally makes sense. And it's so much easier to prevent problems than to try to tackle it once there's an injury and they end up on crate rest and they lose the muscle they had before the injury. And I see a lot of those straight-legged dogs like you're talking about, like English bulldogs, chows, etc. And so that's really good to know that you can support the structure that they do have, even if they're not born with as good of structure as some other breeds of dogs.
Yeah, and I mean, the sooner we're able to improve a dog's posture and movement, the better it's going to be long term. Then we're not as likely to get those degenerative changes in the joints that will happen from the poor alignment over time.
Absolutely. That makes so much sense. So, on to gait. What is the difference between posture and gait? And when you're talking about gait, why is that important as well, besides posture?
Yeah, so the posture is going to refer more to a static position. So with dogs, the three main canine postures would be the stand position, sit position, and down position, and remaining in those postures. Whereas the gait refers to their locomotion. So dogs have several gait patterns. The slowest one would be a walk, followed by an amble, trot, pace, canter, gallop. And each gait can provide information. It's really important to watch how a dog moves. Their posture alone can give us information on their joint alignment in a static position, but a lot of the times, pain or discomfort, it's really more going to show up during a dog's gait. So when we're watching how they move, watching how they compensate in their movement, it's going to reveal signs of compensation, discomfort, potential injury. So it's really worth paying attention to how a dog moves and if they feel or appear to seem more comfortable at a walk compared to a trot, or are they completely avoiding trotting? Because sometimes that will happen in dogs who have back pain. A trot is kind of what we'd consider a jog with a dog, and it's a diagonal limb movement where the front leg moves with the opposite hind leg. And so, with that, there's a little bit of torque that's going to happen through the spine. And if the back is uncomfortable, a dog may choose not to do that gait at all and opt for other gait patterns. And so, just kind of paying attention to how they're moving, if they're avoiding anything, if they aren't placing as much weight into a certain leg, that sort of thing can be really helpful in gathering information.
That's so interesting. One of my clients actually showed me the paperwork that you gave them for the gait analysis that you did for their dog. And this client specifically, I noticed the posture of the dog because it was sitting kind of on, he was sitting on his low back. And so when I tried to lift up a front leg, then he'd start to fall over. And so he couldn't hold his balance. And when he was pulling away his legs, it wasn't because he was afraid of nail trimming, but it was just hard for him to sit on three legs. And so what I saw from them was the really detailed gait analysis that you provided. And it sounds like that's, one of the most important things that you look at. And so what does that gait analysis look like more? I'm going to show the audience some pictures of that. And are you looking both at video and stills? Just if you could tell me more about the gait analysis, that's fascinating.
Yeah, it is really fascinating. So, when a client is interested in a gait analysis, whether that's for we're trying to identify potential areas of discomfort, or if they just want it to use for a fitness program to make sure it's completely optimized to the individual dog, what I like to look at for dogs is their static postures. So, the stand, sit, and down, and see what those look like. It can also be a very valuable resource, especially for people who are newer to this, is comparing those static photos to the breed standard photos, especially in standing, it can give us an idea what's normal for that breed. So it can be a nice way to kind of compare. Do the joints look aligned the same? Does the back have the same shape to it? That sort of thing. In my assessments, I also like to do then the gait analysis. So whatever clients can get, my preference is all the gait patterns if possible, or at the very least a walk and a trot. And I like to see the dogs coming forwards and backwards and from both sides. So there's going to be information from all directions. I also like to see dogs with their daily activities. It sounds kind of silly when I ask people for photos of their dog pottying, but seeing how a dog chooses to go to the bathroom, it can provide information to us. Does a poop look comfortable, or do they have to walk around while they're pooping? For urinating, are they able to balance on one leg if they're a leg lifter and that sort of thing? It can also be beneficial to see just different movement mechanics. What does the dog look like when they're going into a down or from a down to stand? What does the dog look like going from a sit to stand? And that sort of thing. And just kind of gathering data on like for example, we're not getting quite as much hip flexion on that left side as I'd typically like to see for a dog like this. I'm going to note down that there's limited range of motion there. And then just kind of depending on all the data points, we can go from there and then make a decision whether will this dog benefit from a custom exercise program, or would this dog be better suited to going and seeing a specialist and getting diagnostics done on certain areas?
That makes so much sense. I hadn't really thought about looking diagnostically at dogs going to the bathroom or going from one position to the next. But now that you say that, when I'm having dogs say, like, go into a sit for a nail trim or a down, I definitely see differences between using their muscles to get them into that position versus kind of slowly falling into that position. And so that makes a ton of sense that fitness could help make that more efficient and then therefore less painful, and something that I'm definitely going to be looking at with the dogs that I work with. So I want to transition into nails because that's my specialty. And that's what's gotten me interested in canine fitness in the first place, because I can't do my job if a dog is in pain or unstable. And so, how do long nails affect a dog's gait?
That's a really good question. It's really interesting. So, dogs are digitigrade animals, meaning they walk on their toes, whereas humans, we walk more on the soles of our feet. So, when the nails are long, it can have a lot of effects on the body. So, if we're thinking about the nails being overgrown, that's going to create upward pressure through the nail into the toe, shifting the dog's weight backwards, and it's going to cause compensatory shifts throughout the entire musculoskeletal system. So it's going to alter their center of gravity. That weight is now shifting backwards to avoid that nail pressure. Muscle compensation, there's going to be abnormal loading throughout the dog's body from shifting it back. The feet themselves can flatten and splay to try and reduce that contact with the ground. So then we're developing weak feet. And I mean, the feet are so important. That's the first thing that comes in contact with the ground. So having weak feet is going to affect the whole body as well. It can interfere with the ground contact, reduce efficiency of push off when the dog is moving. It's going to reduce traction and even proprioception. So the dog's going to be more likely to have some slips and falls without that good traction with the ground. And because it's going to affect their proprioception, it's actually going to affect how they understand where their body is in space. So it's going to affect their balance. It's going to affect their body awareness. Long nails can compress and irritate the surrounding soft tissues, contributing to localized pain in the feet. Something I recommend trying for humans is to try curling your toes under as if they were really long nails, and then try to walk around and see how that feels in your body. It's not comfortable. And I think it really helps you feel how that can affect the whole body upwards.
Yeah, there's so many times when I'm trying to explain something, and I feel like relating it back to our own experiences is really the most helpful. And I hadn't considered that in particular since we don't have four legs, but that totally makes sense too. And I've noticed with dogs that I'm working on that have had long nails over time that it really does seem like they have that localized sensitivity. And so it's kind of a catch 22 where I want the nails to be shorter so that their gait is natural, but because their gait has been unnatural, it's really hard for them to let me touch their feet. And so that really speaks to, again, how important prevention is, both for proper posture, looking at gait, and keeping nails shorter from the beginning. And it's nice to hear from your expertise things that I've kind of thought were probably true, but since it's not my expertise, I wasn't completely sure about the localized pain in the nail bed. Thanks for sharing that. That's really interesting and helpful.
Of course, yeah, it's incredibly interesting what a difference something like that can make in their bodies. And, I think if you were to look at photos of dogs that have had good nail care their whole life and just seeing the alignment through their joints and their body compared to a dog who's had their nails neglected for most of their life, I mean, it's pretty obvious. I'm like, you can really see the differences in comfort and movement.
Yeah, I see dogs at all points in their life. Sometimes I'll see a dog for most of the time, I'll see a dog for years and years of their life and watch those changes. And even though I can advocate for frequent nail trims, some people can't afford it or they don't truly understand what a priority is. And so, what I've seen with those dogs, along with the splayed feet, is they've got kind of like the shoulders are dropped. And with the back nails going backwards, I'll see an even straighter knee and kind of the hips hiking up. And so, I see that dip in the center of the spine. Is that another place that is commonly going to be in pain, or is it kind of all over the body from all the joints being out of whack?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, so first, the long nails are going to affect the limbs, but then through affecting the limbs, it's going to affect the rest of the kinetic chain, including the spine. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, what I'll see a lot is, I mean, if dogs' nails are too long in the rear, they're shifting weight back, their pelvis is going to tuck under, they're going to potentially get rounded through their back, which is one way of noting that there's tension in the back. Alternatively, if the dog is compensating more in the front, that's when we're more likely to see the dip in the spine. And that's telling me that the dog's spine isn't strong enough to resist gravity. So it's dipping down. And we will see that more often with front end concerns. So, yeah, it absolutely can affect the spine and cause degenerative changes through the spine as well.
I do see that arched back a lot. And what I've noticed with that is that those dogs tend to be especially resistant to handling and especially in the back legs. And for most dogs, I'd say like 90%, they have much more of a struggle having their front nails done.
Mhm.
For whatever reason, I only have best guesses because I can't ask them of are the nails closer to their face? Is it because they have more weight on the front nails? But the exception to that is anytime I have a dog who's actually fairly good with the front legs and not with the back legs, I tend to think that it's less so a fear of nail trimming and more so pain related. And so often I see that rounded back with those dogs. And so is a rounded back something that should be really, really looked at in all dogs? Like, okay, this is a sign of pain.
Yes, for the most part, I'm going to say yes. I mean, sight hounds might be a little bit of an exception. Sight hounds kind of bring me back to talking about the structure again and how dogs are going to be more predisposed to concerns. Sight hounds are pretty predisposed to spinal concerns, so I'll just say that. But outside of sight hounds, for the majority of breeds, we want to see a nice level top line. So the back line is nice and flat. Once they start to get that rounding over their back, that typically indicates there's some pain either in the back or hind end, and the dog is compensating probably to try and relieve that pain. So, yeah, that's a big red flag to me. Spinal pain isn't something we really want to mess around with because it's related to the spinal nerves, and nerve pain is very, very painful. So, yeah, I do think that dogs with rounding over their back, they do deserve a really thorough workup. Typically, it'll start with x-rays, and of course, x-rays are only going to show us the skeletal system. It can show us if there's degenerative changes in the spine, but for dogs where we're really concerned about a potential neuro issue and the rounding over the back is one symptom of a potential neuro concern, we're going to want to see a specialist, which is typically a board certified veterinary neurologist. And typically, to see if there are concerns in the spine, we'd want diagnostics such as MRI. I'm kind of going off on a tangent a little bit here, but yes, rounding over the back is a red flag for pain for me and does deserve to be investigated.
That's so good to know because sometimes I do send people in for imaging. And even though I suspect pain, maybe there aren't yet a lot of degenerative changes in the spine. And from what I've heard from different specialists, is that, and with humans, is that degenerative changes don't always correlate to pain. And so you can have very mild changes and be in a lot of pain, or vice versa, which of course with dogs doesn't necessarily mean they're not in pain. They just might not be showing that pain to the same degree. And so it's so helpful for me to hear from an expert of yes, like this is something that I should give my clients information about. And it's not just, I have a, like no pun intended, a hunch. about it.
Yeah.
Um, and so thank you for sharing that. And when dogs' nails are left too long over time, and I see those splayed feet, I've always wondered, once I get those nails back, is there something you can do with fitness to re-strengthen those feet and get the arch back in the toes, or is that permanent damage?
No, I mean, it shouldn't be permanent damage. If the dog is, I mean, we don't always want to exercise. We don't want to exercise through pain. So, as long as the pain is managed, we can definitely increase the strength through those toes. So, a lot of the times when we get those splayed feet, it's either weakness or a muscular imbalance, but primarily it's the digital flexors, so the toe flexors that are weak. And so we're able to strengthen those. And a lot of that will be exercises that encourage flexion through the feet. So maybe working on paw pods, which are little half domes, which can be nice for engaging through the feet. Digging can be another good one for engaging the digital flexors. Exercise selection just kind of depends on the individual dog and if they have pain or concerns in other areas. An exercise that might be good for one concern can be contraindicated with other concerns. So we do want to be careful about DIYing a fitness program. But yeah, regaining strength in those toes is definitely possible.
That is such good news because
Yeah.
I always heard early in my career that that was permanent, but actually because of your Instagram and some other creators, I've seen what you're talking about with those half domes, and it's given me a lot of hope of maybe those changes aren't permanent. And that also makes a ton of sense about the DIY and not wanting to just copy those things because I see a lot of, the dogs also having to work on balance simultaneously there. And if they're not being progressed slowly into that program, I could see them having to compensate for something they're not ready for. So that is another thing I'm definitely going to start referring people to. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing that's so important with canine fitness is progressing really slowly. A lot of the exercises that I prioritize, they're not really flashy. I mean, they're just working on good movement mechanics and good posture, but we're doing it at a rate where the dog can be successful and they can do it with good alignment. So many people want to rush to using the inflatables and doing all these crazy things on them. And it's just really unlikely that a dog that hasn't had prior fitness training is going to be able to do that with good alignment. And what's unfortunate about progressing way too quickly, it would be the same with humans. That's going to increase our risk of injury. If I just one day decide I want to, do 300-pound back squat while on a Bosu ball, well, my body's not prepared for that. So it's probably going to hurt me.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And the last thing we want to do when trying to fix a problem is to make it worse or create a new problem. I just thought of something else like while you were talking. Oh, I know what it was. Okay. So I do a lot of scratchboarding with my job, and I always tell people, that it's not good for every dog, especially if they're, fiddle-footed out to the side or if they have like arthritis and pain. But it sounds like for dogs who would benefit from exercising their digital flexors in my job, do you think that using a scratchboard would be helpful for them? Or is it still kind of what I was thinking of, like, maybe don't mess with this?
It's kind of hard to say. It might come down to the individual dog. I have a few thoughts here. So, my first thought is with them using the scratch board, they are going to be flexing their toes. I find they don't flex quite as much as if they were digging at a towel, which is how I'll usually do the exercise, or digging through sand or something where that they can like really grab, but it still does work the digital flexor muscles. It just kind of depends a bit on the individual dog. I mean, it's going to depend on that individual dog's mechanics too and how they think they should be scratching, like what that looks like. I've been trying to do some scratchboard work with a recent senior dog I adopted, and he's pretty convinced that I want him to put both front feet up and then slide down like this.
Hmm.
And then he gives up pretty quickly because that is sore on his back, going up on his
Yeah.
hind legs. So we've stopped that for now. It just kind of depends on the individual dog is kind of the truth there. But as long as the dog isn't avoiding the exercise and doesn't seem uncomfortable and isn't doing really weird movement mechanics, it could be beneficial.
Okay, that's really good to know that sometimes it might be good, sometimes it might not be. And that's yet again, I think another thing that I'm going to start sending people to you for to get that expert opinion on whether scratchboarding is a good idea or not.
Yeah, no, another thing to note, I mean, I'm not a veterinarian and I'm not a pharmacist or anything like that, but doing a pain medication trial can be really beneficial. I think the number one thing we want for our dogs is to not be in pain. And I think it's important to do our best to try to get the pain under control before adding in training. We just don't want the training to be painful or to accidentally create an aversion to training. So I think doing what we can with our veterinary team to try and get the pain as controlled as possible is going to be really beneficial before doing any kind of additional training.
I love that you brought that up. That's often something that I do when I'm considering or trying to convince someone to maybe seek out help is
Mhm.
doing a pain med trial just for the data's sake. Because, if nothing changes, okay, like it still doesn't mean that the dog's not anticipating pain once we take away pain. But I do really like to try something that is easier on the client to manage financially and really emphasize that that's again not optional and that that's a huge quality of life thing. And as also animals ourselves, we don't like to be in pain either. And we're going to avoid certain things if we're in pain. We're going to be cranky if we're in pain. And so, one of my biggest goals with spreading information and awareness is for people to note that changes in behavior are often related to pain
Mhm.
and that it's not necessarily a training problem, which I tended to blame myself when anything wasn't working.
Mhm.
And it's been so helpful to my business and my success to kind of think outside of my scope and refer out and see the results once those things have been addressed. So, my last question, as far as your expertise goes, is what are some things that guardians can be looking for to know if there's postural issues or pain, as all of us who are not you or not veterinarians are not really familiar with necessarily like, is this a problem? Is it just my dog's idiosyncrasies? Like, what can they look for?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, general rule of thumb, not always, but we typically want to see pretty straight joint alignment. So, once we start noticing and looking in your dog's hind legs, are the toes turned out? Usually that's not coming from the toes, but it's coming higher up, maybe at the hips. So, seeing are the toes turned out? Well, let's take a look at what the breed standard looks like. Do they have turned out toes? If not, I mean, there might be something going on there. Taking a look at the back positioning. Again, for most dogs, we want to see a nice level top line, some variances in different breeds. So comparing your dog to their breed standard if they have one. And yeah, just kind of being mindful of, does it look like they are putting not as much weight on a certain leg and stuff like that? What I find can be really helpful is taking those static posture photos of our dogs. So from the front, both sides, and the back in the three postures stand, sit, down, comparing to other dogs with similar breeds or structure and comparing over time. Like, does it look like over time posture is maybe degrading or is it improving with some of the things that we're doing? Yeah, I think that for like kind of normal eyes, what is really beneficial is looking at your dog's breed standard and trying to compare what your dog looks like from there. And then just being kind of mindful of, yeah, what their joint alignment looks like. Does it look like their joints are all kind of turned out funny, or does it mostly look like they're stacked one on top of the other? And then just paying attention to your dog moving. I mean, are they moving really slow? Does it look like they're not really engaging their hind end? Are they avoiding a trotting gait? And just kind of being more aware of what their movement looks like in the day to day. Does going to the bathroom look comfortable? If not, it can be worth videoing that and sharing that with your veterinarian because that can bring up signs of discomfort and that sort of thing.
That's really good to know. Videos in general for showing their veterinarian. Again, slightly off topic, but not really, that a lot of dogs are either don't have the space to really move comfortably for a long distance in the veterinary office, but also that they're fairly stressed and they might not show the same gait patterns or postural positions that they would be showing at home. And so I think that's really good for our audience to know how helpful videos would be for taking to their veterinarian.
Yeah, I think that would be my number one tip is getting as many videos as you can from all angles and trimming it down to the relevant portion just because veterinary professionals are busy, but really trying to catch what you're seeing at home and not just expecting the vet to be able to find it in exam because yeah, dogs are so stressed
Yeah.
out, they might not, show what we're seeing at home. But typically, by the time an owner thinks something might be going on with their dog, they're usually probably right.
Yeah, yeah. If most people can't spot the subtle differences, that
Hmm.
makes a lot of sense that once the more major things are showing up, or, like behavioral changes apart from nail trimming and handling, but say not wanting to jump on the bed anymore or into the car, or, maybe circling more before laying down to try to figure out how to do it comfortably, which is also, I would think, maybe important information to tell you and to tell the vet. And so, yeah, thank you for all of that. And lastly, I just want to ask, where can people find you?
Oh, okay. So my website is sitstaysquat.ca. I'm also on Instagram at sitstaysquat and Facebook at sitstaysquat.
Fantastic. I personally love following your Instagram. I learn little things about what's possible and before and after pictures. And also, it's cute.
Thank you.
So, yeah, thank you for everything. It was great chatting with you today.
Yeah,
And
it was great. Thanks for having me on.
you're very welcome. Bye. Do I say bye? It's not a phone call.